You're watching the ZNS Network, the People's Station.
Better than Radio Bahamas. Welcome to the second half of the doubleheader. Many of you would have been tuned into with my good co-host Spence Phillison. He would have carried the first half, and he had with him Lucky Five Ellis on the show. They were talking about Bimini. If you spend a day there, you will want to stay there down in Bimini by the sea. Mike Camp David. And so we want to say a special welcome to all of the listeners who would have been tuned in to the first segment. We're going to begin with prayer today, and I have the pleasure of having a Holmes Rock girl who's joining us as a part of the show as the guest. She's going to open us up in prayer, a member of, by way of the new Mount Olivet Baptist Church, now Central Zion Baptist Church, in the person of Ms. Ludell Stewart. Please open us up with a word of prayer this morning.
O Lord, our Lord, how excellent is your name in all the earth. Father, we give you thanks, we give you praise for this day. We thank you, Heavenly Father, that you are with us, even while we are here on the set. Lord, we praise you and we thank you for our Bahama land. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for allowing us to see 48 years in this beautiful country. Father, all has not been well. Lord, we thank you in spite of it. Lord, we bring before you those who have been ravaged by Hurricane Dorian. Some of them are still not where they should be. But Lord, we know that in everything we ought to give you thanks, and you have a plan for all of us. Lord, as we go on the set today, we pray, Heavenly Father, that what we say or do will be pleasing to you, and that our audience will be able to learn something from us as we dialogue with David Wallace. We pray, Heavenly Father, that you will continue to be our constant guide and stay. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. We had begun the historical journey of saluting our veteran educators, starting in West Grand Bahama, where we begun first with the 8 Mile Rock All-Age School in Hebburn Town, that later became the 8 Mile Rock High School that's located in Martintown, that started in 1850. The first school opened on the island of Grand Bahama. The second school we saluted would have been the West End All-Age School. We were privileged to have the Honorable Mr. Dr. Donald McCartney, along with some veteran educators, Juju Smith and Vanjie Ferguson. And I'd gotten a lot of the information from Mr. Dennis Martin. And that school would have started in West End in 1926. The third school to open its doors in Grand Bahama would have been the Holmes Rock All-Age School in 1939. I'm told by Ms. Midas Roll, who would have been born in 1937, that the school would have opened its doors when she was 2 years old. And she said that Mr. Parker, Walter P. Parker, I found out today from my goddy Betsy that the P is for Fillmore. He would have started teaching at the age of 18 in the Lodge Hall. Not the Lodge Hall that we know today. The Lodge Hall would have been a wooden building. And I remember back in the 70s sometime, this building being put up on stilts and a low boy going underneath it, and they moved it from Holmes Rock, and Ernest and Bristol had bought it, and he put it in his yard at the back in Jonestown. But Mr. Parker started keeping school at the age of 18 in the Lodge Hall, known as the Guiding Star Friendly Society. That within itself is a show within itself. Tells of the history of one Mr. Brown and Walter Parker and them who founded this institution that has no doubt assisted with the burial of thousands of persons over the years. But he started the Guiding Star Friendly Society. And then when the school would have been built, it was opened in 1939, where he served until 1980, some 41 years, 4 generations plus 1 year. He would have given of service as the headmaster. Later they started to call him principal. And so while we will salute him today, succeeding Mr. Parker would have been a Mr. Osborne Pintard. Mr. Osborne Pintard would have been succeeded by a Miss Eula Duncombe. She would have been succeeded by Mrs. Marjorie Cartwright Bethel as principal. Mrs. Bethel would have been succeeded by Mr. Patson Neely, who still lives here on the island, retired. And Mr. Neely would have been succeeded by a Miss Gia Walker, who now lives in Holmes's Rock, married a fellow from Holmes's Rock, and has fallen in love with Holmes Rock. And she now serves as principal of one of the, I think, of the Freeport Primary School. Gia would have been succeeded by Miss Leslie Newton, who now serves as principal of the Martintown Primary School. Mrs. Newton would have been succeeded by a Mr. Michael Roll. Mr. Michael Roll would have been succeeded by a Lillian Walker, who just recently moved on, and I am told the new principal is Miss Jasmine Hepburn. Joining me today to talk about this school that impacted my life is outstanding student of that school. He would have gone to it when it would have been called the Holmes Rock Primary School. Mr. Roger Roll, who started in 1972. Good morning.
Good
Welcome.
morning. Good morning. Thank you, David.
And Ms. Ludell Stewart, who would have started in 1959. Good morning, Ludell.
Good morning, David.
Tell us a little bit about who Ludell Stewart is, where she was born, who she was born to, where she grew up, quickly.
Ludell Stewart is the second child of Raymond Harcourt and Ernestine, sister Martin.
Okay.
Born in Holmes's Rock. Went to Holmes Rock all-age school. I'm now married to Horatio Stewart Jr. We all from the same settlement. And it's good to be here today.
Ernestine, how many children did Ernestine have?
8 children.
Name them for me. Who's the oldest?
Lionel, Cynthia, Ludell, Raymond, Rosa, Franklin, Leroy, and she had a baby named Ernestine after her.
Okay, which child are you?
I am the third from Ernestine and the second from Ernestine and Harcourt.
Welcome. Roger, tell us a little bit about who this Roger Roll is, a role model of my own who have impacted, and I continue to tell people you are a proud son of Holmes Rock and a proud second and third and fourth generation of this Parker family.
Well, I'm pleased to be here. In fact, I'm excited to be here because we are so proud of my grandfather and what his legacy is all about, well known throughout the country and indeed probably throughout the globe. But I am a grandchild of his. I am born to Carolyn Parker Roll and the late Errol Roll. I'm the second of 6 children. Adolph is the oldest. I'm the second. Then Louis Delarice, who's now living in Canada. Shimron, and Pastor Nathan. Nathan was just ordained with some Doctor of Divinity, so he's now Dr. Nathan Roll.
Yes. And you would have attended the Holmes Rock?
Yes, I attended Holmes Rock Primary. It was primary school then, from 1972, just before independence, to 1978, 2 years before my grandfather retired. Drexel Russell, as you know, was my first cousin, his grandson as well. We kind of ruled things for 6 years there. We were excited that our grandfather was indeed the principal at that time, or headmaster, as we used to call it then. And one of the issues I thought about as I was preparing for this show, that every time we got in trouble and what they call going on the line, he never gave us a break. He never, because we were his grandchildren, got a break. But it was certainly an exciting time. We learned a whole lot about not only education, but also the effects of where it is that we're going as a people, and what education should be as a background, and then certainly all the other things that we did, which is including sports. We did agriculture. We understood what cleanliness was, because we certainly had to clean the yard as well. And then we also were involved with drama, poetry, dialogue, and by all means his powerful wife, who was in her own right a beacon, an entrepreneur. She also certainly served lunch right there in the schoolhouse at lunchtime with our famous fried chicken, comforters, and things of that nature. So for the 6 years that we were there, he certainly made an impact on me, my relatives, as well as my former schoolmates. And as you know, kids are like wet cement, they call it. Whatever falls on them makes an impression. So that was a great one for us.
Yes, yes. And history tells us that when the school would have opened in 1937, some of the first students who would have attended that school would have been persons like my father, the late David Janice Wallace, who would have been born in 1932. So around about 1937, he had just turned 5. And then persons like Miss Lees Pinder, very Lees, according to Miss Might, and Clementina Pinder, they would have been some of his first students who would have been born in 1932. She said in 1933, then the school would have had people like Miss Hortense Jones and Regina Martin and Richard Stewart. They would have come because they would have been born around about that time. And then 1934, she said the school welcomed people like Miss Arthur Roll and Mrs. Russell Alvarez and Wesley Roll and Percy Russell and Yvonne Russell. And then there was in 37, when she was born, people like her and Verlene Hannah, Mr. Todd Roll Jones, Heward Russell and Bolene Roll and Irvin Roll. Miss Mike could remember the date everybody was born in Holmes Rock.
Yes.
I would have wished she could have joined us today, but because of COVID, she's not been out since. And so Mr. Parker would have started that school way back then. Ludell, you are the most senior with us today. Who would have started with him? Tell us about your days in Holmes Rock, going to school at that Holmes Rock all-age school.
Well, David, when I started the Holmes Rock all-age school, we used to call the teachers then, they were known as monitors.
Okay.
And at the time when I started, Alpheus Roll,
Yes.
and Betsy Russell, I could distinctively remember those two being the monitors then. And at that time, children would enter school during the year, the same year you are 5 or you turning 5 that same year.
Okay.
It wouldn't be like those who born after September will have to wait the next year.
Right.
They entered school, once they turned 5, they were able to enter school.
And so, who were some of your classmates you remember starting school with?
Some of my classmates were Blossom Stewart, Madeline Stewart, Lillian Roll, Christine Martin. Then we had John Roll, the third.
Yes, from the Furniture Store.
He was, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to say that our class was a brilliant class.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we were like above the class that was ahead of us.
Wow.
Yes, we were class. You could send any one of us to the moon. That's how good we were.
And the most amazing thing was it was one room. The school was one big room that was part of with dividers. And so you had the grade 1s, or class 1s, the class 2, the class 3, and then the bigger ones would have class 4, 5, and 6. They sit up towards the front.
Yes. And during the time when I joined, we had like classes. We had like class 1, class 2, class 3. Then before you go into grade 1.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So you would have been, that would have been the primary section, then you would have gone to the...
I guess that was the area that they taught you, like the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s. And so by the time, if you get into the grade to class 2, if you were brilliant enough to start reading, then you will skip the class 3, and you'll go into grade 1.
Wow. And what were some of the things y'all did at school? Remember?
Well, poetry. Tuesday morning is poetry. So we'll have grade 2 and grade 3. I was in grade 2. Then grade 3, the ones above me would have been like Miriam Stewart, Lorena Pinder, Victoria Roll, which is John Roll's daughter.
Okay, Vicky.
Yeah, they were the ones above. And what I thought so interesting, when it was time for us to repeat the poetry, grade 3 couldn't repeat it, and grade 2 could, which was us.
Wow.
So that was the reason why I said that we were above them when it comes to, the scholastic ability.
So you did poetry on Tuesday?
Poetry on Tuesday.
Anything else you remember growing up, going to school?
Every morning you had to, before school began, you have to repeat the times table. In fact, you have to line up. There's assembly every morning.
Well, before you line up, Clarence Wallace reminded me that the first bell rang at 5 to 9. And it rang at the school, but everyone in the settlement could hear it.
Yes.
And it was a handbell that Mr. Parker used to keep on his desk. And when he rang that bell at 5 minutes to 9, it meant that wherever you was, you had to break off running to get to school. Because he said, if you got to school late, because the second bell rang, at what time, Roger? 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
Sharp. And if you got to school after that second bell rang, you had to go on the line. And nobody wanted to go on the line. And so you remember the assembly?
Yes, I remember the assembly. We had to form a line on the outside.
By grade?
It was almost like a drill first.
That's right.
It's a drill. You have to stand at attention.
And you have to put your hand...
He would look at your fingernails too before you put your hand.
Yeah.
So you look at your fingernails, especially the boys. He would look at the fingernails, then he would look at the hair. And if the hair looked like it wasn't combed, he will use his cane. We call this Cocker Robin cane.
Yes.
He will use it and he will attempt to push it through the boy's hair, at least to see, at least he'll feel the knot.
Yes.
That your hair isn't combed.
So you couldn't butt in Mr. Parker's school?
No, you couldn't blink. You couldn't blink. So we'll have to form a line. Then you were showing just now, you stretch your hands out.
Yes.
It's almost like military.
You put your hand. You had to put your hand on the next person's shoulder. Yeah.
And then we will start to sing the times table. That was a way of teaching us
to learn
the times.
Absolutely.
Yes,
but before that,
table.
I think it was where every grade was on the same line. So all of the class 1s was to the front. Class 2 was behind them. Class 3 was behind them. Class 4 would have been behind.
Yes.
And so based on your rank, and then you would line up, put your hands on the shoulder, and we would have had our morning assembly.
Yes.
And it ended with the singing of the timetables. I remember he used to do a devotion one time.
Yes. Once you get on the inside of the building, then we will sing a hymn, and then we'll all repeat the Lord's Prayer.
There is a green hill far away, without a city wall. I remember that song, where Christ, my Lord, was crucified, who died to save us all. And then we all repeated the Lord's Prayer together. Eh?
Yes.
That's the way of remembering it. And so when I hear of schools now not wanting to have prayer in school, can't be in the Bahamas. Can't be. Not under Mr. Parker.
No.
So, you remember singing your times table?
Yes, I remember singing.
What was your favorite one?
5. Everything in it's 5.
Clarence also reminded me of was Reverend Norwood Rule, that Mr. Parker used the cocker robin to keep the beat of the timetable. So he would beat on his pants.
Yes.
2 1's a 2, 2 2's a 4, 2 3's a 6, and you sing it right to 12.
Yes.
And it was a way of...
And we had 2 tones for it.
Yeah?
Sometimes you'll sing it in the slower tone, and then sometimes you'll sing it in a faster tone. But if you sing it in the slower tone, it gives some of the kids in the area to get there before everyone is filed on the inside.
Wonderful days.
Yes.
Roger, what is your recollection of Holmes Rock Primary?
Very fond. In fact, my memory of Holmes Rock is probably better than the other schools I attended. But we were not so formal in the reciting the times table like Ludell just described. But we certainly had to line up, and really the first day or two of the beginning of the school year is where everybody had to know their positioning during that orientation session. And then for the remainder of the school year, everybody knew their position, so hardly any time was spent on knowing where you needed to be lined up for the daily devotions and assembly. But by all means, I went to school with people like Joylene Jones, Larry Roll, Beverly Sands, Melissa Pinder Parker, Amy Roll, the late Shadwell and Jason Russell, Herbie Culmer, and a number of other outstanding citizens of our country today. And obviously there was keen competition among the three of us, Larry, Jolene, and myself, on
who would come first, second, and third.
Yes. And then in our latter years came Edwin Swan with his mother, who taught us in 5th and 6th grade, Mrs. Swan. And he was certainly brilliant, given that his mother was a teacher as well. So he was a part of the leading group. But by all means, my grandfather made a mark on all of us. He used to wear this metal protection on the edge of his heels of his shoes, so you would hear him walking from a distance.
Yeah, coming.
And so we'd know.
That's Mr. Parker coming.
Yes, yes. And then we thought some of the teachers hated us when they used to be off sick, because when they were sick, then he was the substitute teacher. And it was not that he was so unfair or so strict, but we know we could not get away with anything that was outside of the line of what is expected from persons who were disciplined. But it was still kind of easier for teachers back then, though. In the first grade, I remember a white teacher. She was from the UK, Miss Williams. The second grade, I think we were taught by Mrs. Miller, who was married to the former MP, your colleague, James Miller.
Oh, okay.
Third grade, I was taught by Valencia Grant Carroll. Okay. She's now Dr. Carroll, married to Forrester. And then the 4th grade, you may remember Terry Goldsmith. Yes. He was full of drama. We did quite a number of crowd-pleasing things. And then Miss Swan was certainly impactful. She did everything with us, including conducting choir, leading us in sports preparation for island sports, they call it, which was track and field. And certainly education was a mainstream. But I remember the days we ran out on the road barefoot. We had a sand pit in the schoolyard, so that's where we did the field events practice. And then my grandfather was big on farming. He grew up with farming and fishing being a big thing with him and his siblings there in Holmes Rock. So we had sessions where we actually came out of class and spend, for example, maybe an hour and a half in the afternoons, once to twice a week, planting tomatoes, corn, cabbage, and radish, and things of that nature. So quite a number of things. We also was a contending type of school when it came to sports. We placed very high among island sports schools, being that we were one of the 4 primary schools at the time in the Western District. And then also we participated in what they call Music Festival, where we won the competition a number of times as well.
And not only were we competitive, it was probably one of the smallest schools in the island, because when you compare the Holmes Rock All-Age School back then to when Barton Hill came along or Martintown came along from a primary aspect, it was a very small school in terms of the population size.
Right.
Yes.
When I attended, it was an average of 105 students there.
At the school?
Yeah. Yeah, my time, well, usually we just thought that the school in Holmes Rock was for the residents and descendants of Holmes Rock, because we had people attending, like those would be the Wilsons further up in 8 Mile Rock.
Yeah.
Then it would be the Bristers, and it would be the Wallaces, and it would be the Joneses, and then further down in Martin Hill, it would be the Stewarts, all that in that area.
Yeah, and the
then it would be the ones from Deadman's Reef. So all of that was like considered either you are a resident of Holmes's Rock or a descendant from Holmes's Rock. But we saw the influx, I think it was after the school in Hebron Town got burned down. So some of the kids from there came into the Holmes Rock School. So that was an influx right there.
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
So we would have people like Judy Mae Rogers, Joy, she's Rogers now, she was Stewart then, and Irma. And we had some of Mr. Parker's nieces' children, like Berkeley, Lonnie, George,
Wild Goose,
Joycelyn,
Wild Goose Town.
And then we had some of the Joneses there, like Westfield, Washington, and the rest of them, and it just grew from there, And then the Williamses, like Mary
Williamsons, Hubert Williams,
and
Slow,
the Mizicks,
John
Mizick, and Edith, and the rest of them, and there's quite a bit, and so much so that we had to go into the lodge hall. Grades had to go into the lodge hall because the school then became populated. Also, we had Zora and Wild Goose at the time. It was quite a few.
And the Wild Goose.
Yes.
Well, when I checked the history, I realized that when Pine Ridge would have come to an end in 1959, and the community of Seagrape would have been established in 59, they would have closed the school down in Pine Ridge. And so all those students who were living in Pine Ridge, who were going to school in Pine Ridge, when they moved to Seagrape, they then enrolled in Holmes's Rock. And that's why we got a lot of the students from Seagrape and Jonestown of Turks Island descendants, because their parents would have been working in Pine Ridge at the time.
Okay.
We can take a break. When we come back, Roger, we're going to talk about Walter Parker.
Okay.
Who was he? When was he born? Where he went to school? Who was his children? Who was his family? He impacted the lives of thousands of us. It is amazing. He had some good old saying. If you spare the rod, you'll spoil the child. Rainy days are not holidays. You could be you talk about a penny. A saving of a penny. So when you look after the penny, the pounds will look after themselves. You're tuning into Direct Off with your host, David G. We're going to take a station break. We'll come back talking about as we salute the veteran educators of the Holmes Rock All Age and the Holmes Rock Primary School in Holmes Rock, Grand Bahama.
Make your company representative stand out through an embroidery design on your uniforms from Janae's Uniform Center, Chesapeake Road. Janae's utilizes the latest state-of-the-art embroidery technology to monogram large and small quantities of shirts, caps, bags, and other articles. If you don't already have a digitized logo, Janae's can design and digitize your idea and bring it to life. Then install the logo of your choice from their large selections of 27 stock colors of golf shirts in cotton or dry fit, caps, or workwear. Call 394-8385 or 6 or visit www.janae's.com.
As an artist, I travel all over the world and I find inspiration all around me. From the people and especially the environment. I love the Bahamas with all its natural beauty. From Abaco in the north to Inagua in the south and all the wonderful and colorful islands in between. But we must all do our part to keep the Bahamas healthy and clean, now and for the future generations. That's why I want you to find a little time to do your part. I'm doing my part because I care. Do you?
It is important that you follow these 4 R's when taking your medications. Right drug. Remember that each medication is specific for each individual, and what may work for one person may not work for the other. Right dose. Taking more or less than what is prescribed by your provider may cause you to either run out of your pills faster, it may affect your kidneys or liver, and it may even worsen your medical condition. Right time. Taking medications when told ensures that you have enough medication in your body to fight off the illness you may have. Right way. If your medication calls for you to take it whole, with food, or at night only, please follow these directions as there may be side effects. Make a commitment today to be adherent to your medication regimen and practice healthy living.
This message has been brought to you by the Bahamas AIDS Foundation with funding provided by PEPFAR, USAID Local Capacity Initiative Small Grant.
More than 47,000 electronic devices, many with data, were distributed to public school students. Increased their access to the University of the Bahamas, that in addition to free tuition there since 2018, and housing allowance for UB's Family Island students.
Nature-based tourism supplies almost $50 million in revenue for Androsians every year. These priceless resources will continue to provide renewable benefits for thousands of people for years to come, as long as we take long-term action to preserve what's rightfully ours. The natural environment has played a vital role in our culture and economy for generations. Let's take care of nature, and nature will take care of us.
When a hurricane strikes, there are many critical needs to survival. Water is one of them. Access to clean water to drink, bathe, and wash things is often hard to come by, particularly in remote areas. While it's tempting to use whatever water is available, there are a few things that you should do to make sure that your drinking water is safe to consume or use. Boiling your water is one of them. Boiling water kills most pathogens that can be harmful. If your water is cloudy, filter it through a clean cloth or portable filter. You should boil filtered water for 1 minute, cool, and then store in a clean container with the lid. If boiling your water is not an option, you can disinfect it with bleach. Use 1/8 teaspoon or 8 drops per gallon, then let it stand for 30 minutes. Remember, this water should be stored in a clean container with a lid. Ensuring the highest level of food, animal, and plant safety in the Bahamas. This message is brought to you by the Bahamas Agricultural Health and Food Safety Authority and the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas.
To Direct Talk. I am your host, David G, here in the second city. Flew in yesterday on Western Air. Got to the airport, checked in for Bahamas Air, and Western Air had a 2-hour flight earlier than Bahamas Air 4:30 flight. Man, I break off running. Jumped on that Western Air flight, and so I sent a shout out to Western Air this morning, to Rex Wilson, and to Pat Smith, and all of the crew in Nassau, Gladys. Thank you very much yesterday, Rex. Western Air said you'll get us there, and you sure did. Bahamas Air says we don't just fly here, we live here. And so this show is brought to you today by Bahamas Air, by the Marathon Veterinarian Clinic, located on Marathon Road in Nassau, by LMC Lumber, All Build Hardware, and T&N Construction. Go and see Barry or Bruce. They did a sponsorship in honor of their father, the late Thomas Smith, hard-working Turks and Caicos Island descendant who came here, started fixing screens, and built a lumber yard. By Atlantis Hotel, they have some local rates. Call Sarah Kirkby. Go and have a dinner. Make sure you have your vaccine, because they have some COVID protocols in place. If you don't have your vaccine, don't waste your time going over that lattice. And by old Bahama Bay, James Culmer, Freeport High School class of 1978, and Horatio Stewart's daughter. What's the name down there? Laquelle. Go and see them. They have a full wedding package. Go see Jared and have lunch out there by the Teasers Tiki Bar or West Side Bar and Grill. I want to send a special shout out today to Vina Stubbs, the wife of Will Stubbs, you know. He called all excited at Vina's birthday today. Vina fall asleep on him early tonight. Do him a favor. That comes from your husband, your daughter Alyssa, Ashley, and my godchild Wilbur Jr., and from your father, Pastor Joseph Taylor, and his lovely wife Judith. And I want to send a special sympathetic greetings going out to Terry Wildgoose's family. Came in yesterday, his brother Kenny came in. I dropped him by his sister, my Aunt Nep, who was married to my Uncle Jay Wallace. Terry's an 8 Mile Rock boy. Don't mind these people in Freeport trying to lay claim to Terry. Terry is right through the crossroad there going to the Ritz, Wild Goose Town. His father, Johnny, was the first policeman on the island of Grand Bahama. Never lock up a soul, but he had kept law and order. People used to behave back then. And I remember that family when we used to play basketball, to watch them play basketball at St. Stephen's Anglican Church basketball court. That's the first set of basketball was held. Before there was a YMCA. We used to go there with the 8 Mile Rock Tigers. And Terry then was involved with basketball from back then. And so I want to remember not only him, but his brothers Kenny, Welly, and Washi, and send sympathetic greetings out to his children. I'll be to the funeral on Saturday. Roger, before we went to the break, tell us a little bit about who this Walter P. Parker was.
Walter Fulmore Parker Sr.
Yes.
Was born on the 31st of July, 1920. So in 2 weeks' time, if he was still alive, he'd be 101 years old. He was born right there in Holmes Rock to Joseph Parker Sr., and he was the last of 7 children. He was the baby. He had sisters Clara, Rowena, Satella, and brothers Wendell, Joseph Jr., and Nathan Parker. By all means, some people may know of his brother who was just before him, Wendell, who also did a whole lot of stuff with government, with education, with the advancement of the people.
And Wendell would have been married to, I think, Arala Jane.
Yes.
And their children would have included Jackie Gray,
right,
who was married to former Senator Albert Gray.
Right.
And to Lavender,
who's a teacher as well.
Yeah, married to Terrence.
But my grandfather had 6 children.
Okay.
4 girls and 2 boys. Betsy, Lottie.
My Gotti.
Yes. Lottie, who was named after her grandmother. My mother was next, Carolyn. Then it was Erlen, who's now deceased, as you know, from 1996. He passed. Then Walter Jr., and then
married to Jeanette.
Yes, and then Nellie Bonnell, who
the baby
lives in Nassau.
Nell went to Nassau at a young age.
Yes, she did. She did. But 4 of the 6 were monitors.
Yes.
Just Walter Jr. and Nell were not monitors, so the 4 oldest. And then also Aunt Lottie and Uncle Erlen, they both went to Nassau for a while to get some certifications that was appropriate at that time for teachers to have in terms of qualifications to teach. And Aunt Lottie was the last of the 4 of them to remain in school. In fact, she was a monitor or a teacher for my first 2 years. She didn't necessarily teach me, but she certainly made an impact on me as well. I remember one time I got in trouble because we went out looking for cocker robin. As you know, that's what the grandfather needed.
To beat you with?
Yes.
He used to send you to go look for your own spitch.
Yes. And so Skippy, my first cousin, and his group, who were a few grades ahead of me, they were lighting paper bag and smoking it as a spliff. So you want to get some of this? I said, no. But the scent got on my clothes.
Okay.
So somebody told my Aunt Lottie, before I got back to the schoolyard, She tanned me. Then I had to go on the line and got tanned from my.
What, did you get beaten in school?
And then I went home that day. And guess what?
Not a beating.
Oh, man. So I would never forget that. But my Aunt Lottie was the last of the children to stay in the schooling in terms of teaching. But he actually started teaching before leaving the 8 Monarch All-Age School as a student. So as a student there, he
was
began,
a monitor?
He began monitoring from then.
Okay.
In 1934 at the age of 14. So he remained a monitor between 34, he finished in 35, continued, and then certainly moved on the 25th of September, 1939, to begin the Holmes Rock All-Age School as head teacher.
Who was he married to?
He was married to the powerful, and some people call it biggity, but you know the Martin family, we're not familiar with it. But the very bold, the courageous Doreen Martin Parker.
Okay.
My grandmother made a similar impact on all of her children and grandchildren because she played a role in the community. Both community events as well as church events. By all means, she also served, like I said earlier, lunch for the students in terms of what she was a great cook.
Lula, you remember those chicken wings?
Yes, I do.
Talk about them.
Chicken wings and the conch fritters. Then she will cook up peas and rice. You know, you have a full lunch if you want it. Once you can pay for it, it's yours. You know.
What lunch used to cost back then, Lula? Remember?
$1.
Absolutely.
$1. 25 cents.
25 cents was for the chicken wing.
And 25 cents for the chicken wing, yes.
And they were the rightly folded wings.
Yes.
They wasn't them wings with wide open today.
No.
She folded that, that what we call the devil toe.
Yes.
Under the big part of the chicken wing, and the line used to be long to that kitchen door.
Long, and she doesn't cut it in half. That way you'll have the drumex and the wing.
One whole wing.
One whole wing.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And I'm told the macaroni was excellent.
Yes. She was a very good cook.
And she provided lunch for those who wanted to buy lunch, who was fortunate to have money.
Yes.
Back in the days, for my family, all 13 of us had to march down to Holmes Rock to my grandmother Florence, where it's amazing how she could have fixed lunch for all of us and never one day gave us a bill to carry to our parents. And she was happy to see her grandchildren and her children, because headed up by Mina and Manny and Joyanne and Leon and James and Rosalind and Sevi and me and Maureen and Salathiel and Franklin and Joycelyn and Mina. And so it was very impactful to us. When did Mr. Parker retire, Roger?
He retired in 1980 at the age of 60. Okay. He was strict about, I guess, the retirement at the time. He had done 41 years, was kind of exhausted, and wanted to have a freedom of retirement where he actually lived for an additional 26 years. He died on the 17th of November, 2006. 17th of November, significant because my late father, that was his birthday. He was at the residence of his daughter, Lottie, and his wife actually died the year before him in about June of 2005. But they both lived productive years, made a great impact in the community, and their legacy both live on today.
And the government honored him by naming a government school. While some of us would have wanted to have the school named in Holmes Rock after him, they named that school in Freeport. When it would have been built, I don't know the year, but we thought it was a great distinction when they named that school after him.
Yes, in actually January 1984.
Wow, way to go! I tell you, you are the official historian of the family now. You know, of Holmes Rock, January of '84.
Yes, that school was named after him.
And I called a few of his former students to talk about him. Norwood Roll said he would have entered the doors of the school in 1955. So Mr. Parker was keen on the 3 hours. Reading,
Writing,
and arithmetic.
Yes.
And Ludell, you say he used to give you your sums just before lunch?
Arithmetic, yes, running into the lunch period. So if you are done, you can go out and have lunch. Well, if you're never done, then you never get to go out.
So you said
you stay in, yes.
That you had to finish the sums before you leave.
You will have to finish it before you leave. And then there were some, of us who never could have finished it. But then what we would do...
Don't call the name today.
No. What we would do, we will see the stress on them, and they may get chicken wing and slip it to them so they can have something to eat. Yes.
My Uncle Clarence said to me that you couldn't talk in Mr. Parker's school.
No.
Say, if you had a message for one of your friends, you had to write it on a piece of paper, pass it to you, and you will tell him, pass it down. You keep passing the note, and they read the note, but you could not open your mouth. And Mr. Parker used to stand over you with your arithmetic. And if you couldn't get it right, you know what you was getting.
Yes.
And Norwood said Mr. Parker impacted his life so much that he went to see him after he was retired and was in his winding years. And he asked Mr. Parker, I was with him that day, say, what caused him to be such a disciplinarian and to be the way he was? And you know what he said? He wanted the best for his students.
Yes.
That's all he did. And he impacted thousands. Norwood concluded by saying he was a great man. And at the age of 13, Mr. Parker selected him to be a monitor.
Yes, he was.
And he said what Mr. Parker used to do was after 3 p.m. was when he had classes for the monitors. So he would have been teaching the monitors how to be a teacher after 3. So they stayed back for an hour or 2, and then they would have been monitors. My Uncle Clarence said some of the monitors, like Betsy and them, when Mr. Parker used to go, he used to leave the school in their hands.
Oh, yes.
And if you talk, they used to write your name
on the board.
On the board.
Yes.
And when Mr. Parker come back, you had to line up if your name was on that board, and you ain't got a word. That Cocker Robin was coming down.
You never got a break.
No. As a matter of fact, Uncle Clarence said that even if you did something after school,
yes,
4 o'clock in the evening or 5 o'clock, if Mr. Parker found out about it, you had to give an account the next day. Is that true, Ludell?
Yes, I was one of them. I remembered I might have been about 6 years. I didn't realize if he couldn't see me, that he would know it's me, even if I say something. I figured you had to see me to know it's me, not knowing that, okay, I know your voice. So he was going down to the shop. I was by Andora's. I saw him walking. He liked to smoke his pipe.
Yes.
He had his pipe in his mouth, and he's walking down. Well, they always say that I was one of those children who would say out things, they'll say disgusting or you mischievous.
Yes.
And I hid behind the window, and then I held my head up, and I shouted out, "Hey, you long pipe." And then I ducked back down. Wow. And then I did it the second time. "Hey, you long pipe." And I ducked back down. And sure enough, in school the following day, and he used his finger. Come up here. Yeah. Come up here. And I went up shaking because I said, how you know it was me? I wasn't old enough to realize that he knew my voice. So I got
You got your beating for that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no.
Surely did.
He was a disciplinarian. And then he had a lot of quotes. He was a man famous for quotes.
Yes.
Time lost.
It's lost forever.
Is lost forever.
Cannot be regained.
Absolutely, yeah. Whatever is worthwhile doing?
It's worthwhile doing well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And strangely enough, this morning, getting ready for work, I was listening to Rex Major, who was talking about independence and the author of the national anthem, and how he was so visionary in writing the national anthem. And then he drew a reference as children growing up in Eleuthera. They were taught by the same P.A. Gibson, Timothy Gibson, I'm sorry, the royal readers. Say the royal readers had to be in every house. And there was a World Reader 1 for grade 1, for class 1, and World Reader 2. And Mr. Parker made sure he instilled in us to read.
Yes.
And you had to do your homework, Clarence, because the first thing when you get to school the next morning was your homework. And if your homework wasn't finished, that's another beating. Mr. Parker had to get tired beating Roger.
No, sir. Remember, he also rang the bell. He rang it several times. So he knew about being physical in terms of being in shape, and so he was prepared for that kind of stuff. And plus, it's motivation too. He truly cared for the students, and he knew that was actually helping them.
Absolutely, brought out the best. And I started to try and research who were some of the monitors. And if we don't get your name and you want to call in today, if you have, we'll open the lines for persons who want to call in to talk about Walter Parker. The number to call is 352-3903 or 4. We got to find the number. 352, go ahead. 352-3984. 352-3984. If you have a wonderful memory of 352. It's right up there, Roger. Mr. Parker would have beat me. I didn't see it right up there. And so some of the monitors I know of would have been my father, the late David G. Wallace. Right. I'm told that Christiana Wallace and Bristol was a monitor as well. I believe Mr. John Roll from the furniture store, I believe he was a monitor. I think John would have been born earlier, but he would have spent some time there because he probably would have started at the 8 Mile Rock all-age school, and when the Holmes Rock School would have been finished, he would have gone on there to finish. As you mentioned earlier, my Aunt Betsy, she would have been Parker Russell, and Lottie Parker Monroe. I'm also told that John Alpheus Roll was a monitor.
Erlin.
Hattie May Roll was a monitor. Erlin Parker was a monitor. But they can't take the place of my two monitors. Clea Bartlett Newbold and Jennifer Stewart Parker. Oh, I love them. And every time I see them, I remind them that they were my first and second grade teachers at the Holmes Rock all-age school. And then my sister Maureen reminded me that Romelda was a monitor as well. And so he seemed to have used a lot of students right there from the school.
Yeah, I learned
and
also.
Now Norwood Roll was a monitor.
Yeah, I learned that Aunt Jackie Roll was also.
Okay. Anybody else you know who would have been monitors?
Lorena.
Oh, Lorena.
Yeah.
The brightest girl in Holmes Rock. She was the prettiest girl. Miriam Stewart?
Yes.
Okay.
And Valderange for a short while.
That's Valderine Williams. Valderine Roll Williams. Okay.
And then I took over from her for about 3 months after she resigned.
So you too.
So you was a monitor as well?
3 months.
Did you get paid?
No.
I asked Norwood, what was the monitor paid? Norwood said they were paid £5 a month. You know, I said, Norwood is a bright boy, you know, he's an accountant, CPA. I say, tell me what that was in dollars and cents. He say, well, £1 is about $2 and something cents. So that probably would have been about $10 or $12 that they would have been paid on a monthly basis as a monitor. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. I also learned from Aunt Betsy yesterday that their monies, the four of them, his children who were monitors, none of the monies went to them. They went to his account. They said they really didn't need any money anyway. So
Mr. Parker would have covered everything. Yeah. Not only was he impactful, he was a disciplinarian. And that is what you need today. It is quite evident that's what made us what we are today. And so as we remember him, Clarence tells me that, and you called some names right, I didn't realize Sherwood Russell and them went to Holmes Rock all age. And Clarence said that Sherwood was the mail boy. He was responsible for walking up to Herboyne Town, because that's where remember the post office would have been in Herboyne Town back in the days. So that's where the school was, the church was, the commissioner's residence was. And so Sherwood would have been responsible for walking up to Herboyne Town, getting the mail, walking to Holmes Rock, and he had to be to school before 9 o'clock with the mail, because he was the mail boy back then.
And the cane selector.
Oh yeah, Sherwood and Ed Parker, I'm told, used to go for cane. And they had to bring Mr. Parker that special cocker robin that he used. Holmes Rock was always also a sports power. When we come back after the lunch break, we're going to try and reach Brenda Farrington. She's now married. And my Aunt Mina reminded me of what her last name is now, but I old school. I know it's Brenda. Allaire. Brenda Farrington Allaire. She's going to try and get in. And then I have Holmes Roll coming in. He would have been those who came after us, Roger. My time, my classmates were Elgiver Stewart, Fillmore Russell, O'Brien, Roll, Wendell, Roll, Rosanelle, your sister, Rosanelle.
Verna too, Laverna.
Yeah, Verna would have been around my time. And I always remember it was always me, Elgiver, and Fillmore who came first, second, and third. I left in 1968 after my father got killed in 1967 to go to Martintown Primary School. And that's when I came across people like Mrs. Gibbs, who was my 3rd or 4th grade teacher, and Mrs. Johnson, Elcott Johnson, wife, who was my 6th grade teacher before I went on to Freeport High School. And so Holmes Rock is near and dear to me. The school is very fun, and it's still going. Brandon will talk about the days when they used to run barefoot. Roger, you used to run barefoot, or you had spikes?
No, barefoot.
Man, stop talking
yes, man, back in the 70s. Spikes came out in the mid-80s and beyond.
I asked Miss Mike what they used to wear going to school back then. She said they used to wear a chamois dress. Had to been blue. I don't know what chamois was. And the boys wear whatever they wanted. Clarence, when he started, you had to wear the red shirt and khaki pants. And Clarence said you couldn't come with no short pants. It was the khaki pants. We're going to take a break for this midday news, and when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation as we salute the veteran educators of the Holmes Rock All Age, now Holmes Rock Primary School. You tune into Direct Talk with your host, David G.
When Christopher Columbus first arrived in the Bahamas, he was so struck by the numbers of Bahama parrots he encountered that he wrote in his log, "Flocks of parrots darken the sun." Sadly, this is not the case today. Once found throughout the Bahamian archipelago, the parrot now resides only on the northernmost island of Abaco and the southernmost island of Inagua.
We have those two breeding populations here in the Bahamas. We have the northern breeding population in Abaco, and then we have that the breeding population in Inagua.
In Inagua, they nest in the trees, which is normal. Then you come to Abaco, and they nest in the ground. It's just like, oh, okay. And it's one thing to read about it and to hear persons talk about it, and it's another thing to actually go into the park and see the parrots nesting in the ground. As they lost their habitat, that was the next best thing. Because if they can't find appropriate trees to nest in, then they'll go to the ground. But I'd like to ask some parrots, because that's not the best spot to be nesting in.
So that in itself is a challenge. And we're going to be working with Caroline Stahala, who's very interested in working on putting forward some conservation ideas as to how are we going to deal with this.
We are concerned because nests are being predated, the chicks are being eaten, as well as adults being killed inside the nests by predators such as cats and raccoons. And that's actually quite a large concern right now, because if we start losing breeders as well as the young of the population, then we'll see a decline in this population as well. And it's something we're trying to ameliorate right now by removing some of the predators out of the park.
In recognition of the fragility of the Abaco population of parrot, the Abaco National Park was created in 1994.
We wanted to make sure that we protected their nest areas as well as foraging areas to make sure that this population of the parrot didn't fall by the wayside. And here come the parrots.
Stahala spends many weeks each year documenting the parrots' population numbers, as well as their eating and nesting habits.
When we're out here, we look for signs of the birds having a nest cavity or breeding. So we're looking for either the male sentinel or both of the birds sort of scouting out an area, being territorial to an area, and using those behaviors, we then find the nests. And, well, what do we do with the nests? Well, we monitor them. We want to see how successful they are. If they're not successful, why not?
We now know, because of the research done by Frank Rivera, that the population in Inagua is way healthier. We've probably got between 3,000 and 5,000 birds in Abaco, and we probably have 18,000, 20,000 birds in Inagua. Very good, healthy population down there. Very widespread, though. Very difficult to have a place to protect them because they are all over the place.
They're very partner specific because we tend to think that you see birds flying all over, but we don't really tend to look at them as social animals sometimes and know that they actually partner up.
The parrots on Inagua, they don't have as many predators or as many threats to them as here on Abaco, primarily because of the nest sites. On Inagua, they nest a little bit higher, so they're a bit more protected than here on Abaco. Also, there isn't the development pressure that Abaco is starting to see, so you're not getting all the influences of habitat fragmentation, loss of foraging areas, and introduction of more and more predators into the area.
So we may have to work with developers to leave some coppice area, change the way the land is cleared surrounding the park, be more environmentally sensitive, have some, borders around the park that stay very forested. Yes.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Direct Talk. I'm your host, David G. here. So glad to be home in Freeport. No place like home. Fall asleep downstairs last night, Roger. If I was married to Carolyn like you, Carolyn said when you used to fall asleep in the sofa, she used to turn the air conditioner down cold, to make sure you get cold so you had to come in the bedroom. Charmaine was happy to leave me downstairs. But it's nice to be in the second city of Grand Bahama. I want to remember a good friend of mine, Wayne Smith, today, who is in Florida. We had a wonderful conversation yesterday. He talked about how he is enjoying the program, being over there. He goes for a drive every day at 11 o'clock, so he could turn on his radio. So as he riding the highway, he could be tuning in. I asked him to call in today because he gave me some wonderful history about West End and the school days and the track stars back in the day. I'm hoping Brenda Farrington can get in after we finish with Treason Stewart, who's on the line, because she was one of them sports power of Holmes Rock. Her and a fella named Otlin Big O Stewart.
Yes.
They used to make you feel proud to say you were from Holmes Rock. And I remember the Parker family, Cora and Angie, were all Holmes Rock students. I spoke to their brother James Parker, who said he didn't spend much time in Holmes Rock. He was only there for a couple of years. Then he went to 8 Mile Rock all age because he had moved to 8 Mile Rock to live with some family members. But all of those children would have gone there, including their brother, the late Eric Parker. M.A. Parker would have gone there, and Wilton, and then the two girls, Cora and Angie.
Wyoni, Winnie.
Wyoni, that's right. Wyoni and Winnie. And Pearl. Yeah. Big family. Oh, yeah. Mama Rini. They all, Walter would have, Mr. Parker would have been their uncle. That's right. Treason Stewart, Holmes Rock is on the line. Good afternoon, Treason. Welcome to Direct Talk.
Yeah, David Wallace. I want you to tell Ludell and Roger hello for me, man.
Go right ahead. Tell us about your days at that Holmes Rock all-age school.
Yeah, well, I tell you a little of it last night, and everything Ludell and Roger said, it was like on the beat, man.
You had any experience with Mr. Parker having to discipline you?
Man, for Jesus Christ's sake, I walk out of school because the man disciplined me, man. the man used to beat us every day, boy.
Who were some of your classmates growing up? Who you remember was in school with you when you were there?
Well, it was Rena and Palmas. Quite a few, man. Jeff.
Oh yeah, that's right, Jeff Rule. Yeah, can't forget Jeff.
Yeah, man. But I was in school with all the people who get cut by.
Including you.
Including me, yes, indeed.
Well, we want to thank you for calling in. You are a proud son of Holmes Rock. You still live there.
Yes,
you only like me and Roger them who flee.
No, I'm home.
We'll find it. We gotta find our baby later.
No, I'm a piece.
Thank you very much for calling in.
I'm a piece of the rock, man.
I'll send the number to Brenda to try and see if we can get Brenda Farrington. What's the new last name? Alaire on the phone.
Man, that was the
call is 3. Oh, okay. 352-3984, Roger. Yes, right there. That's 1-242-352-3984. If you can get in, Brenda, you can speak to Cindy, who will tie you into us. Before we went while we were doing the break, Ludell, you were saying what Mr. Parker used to tell us about reading?
Oh, he says to us, read, read, read. Read good books written by good authors, and you will learn something new every day.
Wow.
So every afternoon, we had to take a book home to read.
I remember the Royal Readers, and that's where I learned that wonderful poem that Phil Stubbs sang in a song called Drive the Nail Right Boys, called Persevere. Mm-hmm. Hit it on the head. Say, fight with all your might, boys, while the iron's red. So when you got work to do, boys,
do it with a
will. He who reached the top, boys,
first must climb the hill.
Standing at the foot, boys,
gazing at the sky.
How can you get up, boys?
You never try.
Though you stumble off, boys,
never be downcast.
Try
and try again, boys. You will succeed at last.
I spoke to my Uncle Clarence. He's not going to say anything publicly. But he has a memory. So he couldn't understand why you had to bathe and wash your foot before you go to school, because you had to walk to school barefoot. So by the time as you get to school, your foot was dirty, dirty, dirty. Ms. might say, and if you had tennis, you had to walk to school barefoot and then put on the tennis when you get to school and take it off when time to walk back home. And he also said that Mr. Parker had students from Deadman's Reef, like you said, all the way to Hebburn Town in the east. And then he reminded me that Iceland Walker, Lorenzo, them sister, as close as they was to the school.
Late every day.
Late every day.
That's why sometimes we'll sing the twice timetable. I guess he probably was a little lenient. We'll sing it slow.
Yeah, to try to get up people to go in.
Yeah.
And Mr. Parker used to beat them.
Yes.
For getting late. He said he was an incredible teacher. And he was responsible for teaching from grade 1 to grade 6. And so the Walter Parker produced some of the smartest students, he said, in the country. And I think all of the students who came up under Walter Parker are proud to say that he would have impacted their life. And then Clarence talked about the garden that they had back in the 50s. So you were right. Mr. Parker was farming. He had the children weeding, planting, and reaping.
Yes.
And he taught us how to farm. Clarence said some of the students who went to school with him would have been people like Simon Martin, John Wallace. Him and John was in the same class. And I found out during the break that Reverend J.C. was a monitor. As a matter of fact, he would have been one of the last monitors of the turn when they would have been moved from a monitor to an assistant aboriginate or something, he said.
Subordinate.
Subordinate. And his sister, my Aunt Sheila, was a monitor as well.
Yes,
Sheila Wallace Hepburn.
Yes.
But some of his classmates would have been, like Clarence said, Ed Parker, M.A. Parker, Walter Parker, Charles Bartlett, Otland Stewart, Buster Morley, Sandra May Stewart.
Yes.
Nellie Parker, Jeanette Parker, Romelda Stewart, Jennifer Stewart, Treason Stewart, Sherwood Russell. And then he talked about their track team. One time they had to go to West End. That's where the field was back then. So I guess the competition used to be between West End and Holmes Rock. And probably 8 Mile Rock would have traveled to West End for their sports day. But he said their team comprised of Otland Stewart, who led off the race.
And David, I remembered we opened the sports field at West End, beating them.
In West End?
Yes.
Well, I'm told by Dennis Martin that they had some outstanding track people. Like Jackie Popal.
Yes.
He said if Jackie Popal had kept running, she would have made it to the Olympics.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, he said Jackie was so fast until Peter Gregory named a boat after her. The boat that he skied from West End to West Palm Beach on backwards, and when he set the world record, was called the Jackie. He named it the Jackie after Jackie Popal. And then there was Donald Kerr.
Yes.
He was an outstanding runner from West End.
And Jokum.
Long distance. And Jokum.
Jokum Hollingsworth.
Jokum Hollingsworth.
Yes.
There was always this competition between Jokum and Otland Stewart.
Yeah, and Lorena used to run with Jackie Popal. They used to run the 200 meters.
Okay.
Rena, she was a fast runner too, but she couldn't.
You can remember all of this.
She couldn't beat Jackie Popal for real.
Yes.
But it wasn't a distance between them like that.
Yeah.
She was close to her, but she couldn't pass her.
Yeah. Jackie said Jackie was good.
Yeah, she was fast.
So Clarence tells the story of this 4x4 one relay where Otland led off. And Simon Martin ran the second leg. They was leading. Clarence ran the third leg, and he was leading. Then he passed the baton on to Michael Stewart. Michael had a 50-yard lead. He said, and Donald Carr ran Michael Stewart right down. And they was hollering, run, Michael, run, Michael, run. But there was, I guess, the competition back then at the Independence Park in West End. And then sports would have taken another twist. And you guys would have come along, Roger, because you were dominant sports power.
Yeah. Fortunately, I think I inherited a lot of that from the Parkers.
Okay.
And persons like myself, even Holmes was dominant in certain field events. And as you know, he was a powerhouse in football, along with Drexel. But Pauline Saunders, too, was a super athlete in my day. Although Daphne was the one who advanced to the college level, and as you know, she represented the country. Pauline was a natural talent.
Yeah, and then Daphne was outstanding.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about Daphne's career, because she made us all proud. She ran her way through school.
Yes, Daphne, she was good in track, but field, as you know, was a primary thing with the long jump. She won some medals with Carifta, and then she had a full scholarship and had education completed successfully at LSU in the United States, and she's now a physical education teacher for years now. I think she's still at 8 Mile High School at this time.
some of the outstanding students who would have accomplished much. I remember Donald Martin, who went on to become, he was a pilot, impacted by Mr. Parker. His sister Christine became a doctor. Dr. Christian, and she's produced some children.
Yeah.
All of them are doctors.
Yeah, she was in my grade.
Yeah, yeah.
She started off, she was a year behind us. The grade she was in, she was too smart for that grade. And she came into our grade, and she tabbed all of us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're all the bright ones.
Yeah, we were the bright ones. Yeah, we were the bright ones.
Yeah. I remember Norwood, who went on to become an accountant. As a matter of fact, he might have been the first student of Walter Parker who would have passed the CPA exam and become a certified public accountant. Norwood was so smart, he then gone on to be a lawyer. I tell him, thank God, Norwood's probably still in school. They have a knack for knowledge. Then they would have had some wonderful teachers who would have come out of the Holmes Rock all-age school. I'm very impressed with this young boy now, Trevor Johnson. He was on the show the other day. Oh, Holmes Rock continues to shine. And then Holmes Rock was a dominant power for sports, basketball, and the boys, and there's Holmes Rock ain't Holmes Rock unless you stop by Holmes.
Yes.
We can take a station break. We can change our guests, come back and see if we can get Brenda on the line. We're going to continue our conversation on the historical journey. I'm going to come back with some of the teachers, other teachers who taught at the Holmes Rock All-Age School. Miss Gia Walker, I gave her the task of sending me some names because she would have been one of those teachers. So when we come back, we'll talk about some of the teachers who impacted the lives of thousands here. You're tuning into Direct Talk. I'm your host, David G., as we take our station break.
The natural resources of the Bahamas play a critical role in supporting Bahamian livelihoods. For example, the fishing and tourism industry, which include fishermen, seafood exporters, hoteliers, dive operators, restaurants, and others. Collectively, they generate approximately $1.5 billion a year. Therefore, we must respect and preserve what we have. These resources belong to us.
This is my livelihood.
This is my livelihood.
This is my livelihood.
So let's all do our part to maintain our local economy and a good quality of life. Remember, if we take care of nature, nature will take care of us.
Make your company representative stand out through an embroidery design on your uniforms from Janae's Uniform Center, Chesapeake Road. Janae's utilizes the latest state-of-the-art embroidery technology to monogram large and small quantities of shirts, caps, bags, and other articles. If you don't already have a digitized logo, Janae's can design and digitize your idea and bring it to life. Then install the logo of your choice from their large selections of 27 stock colors of golf shirts in cotton or dry fit, caps, or workwear. Call 394-8385 or 6 or visit www.janaes.com.
The 2020-2021 pause in scholarships for Bahamian students to attend international colleges and universities has been lifted. Millions will be awarded in the 2021-2022 budget, adding to the $45 million awarded to more than 2,000 Bahamian students during the 2017 through 2020 period.
Welcome back to Direct Talk. I'm your host, David G., here in Freeport, Grand Bahama. I want to send a special shout out to the ZNS Newsroom. Sabrina Brown, Tazal Blatch, Italia Hall, Megan Shepard, and Jamelia Mizik. They're the ladies who just make the news and make things happen. I want to send a special shout out to them today. We are now joined with Brenda Farrington, Allure on the line. Brenda, good afternoon. Are you there?
Good afternoon, David. Yes, I am. Hello? Hello?
I'm trying to have you tell a wonderful story of your days at the Holmes Rock All-Age School.
Okay, all right. It was quite interesting. Going to the all-age, that was, I guess, my third school before we all went to 8 Mile Rock. But in terms of going to the school, I guess there's a memorable, I was listening to your show, but nobody mentioned the cleanup time at the school. At the school, the end of the school year, where you had to participate in cleaning your desk and washing the floors. And there was this one time where I felt
Our marine resources were once considered inexhaustible. Conch and reef fish like grouper were abundant everywhere, and it seemed as if the lobster catch would rise forever. But today, there is a downward trend that affects everyone. Researchers say we can reverse the trend by protecting more marine habitats. And the good news is that most Bahamians strongly support efforts to halt further decline. Tripling the size of our network of marine parks will mean more fish and conch for everyone now and for the future, as well as more recreational and ecotourism opportunities. Today, only 10% of our waters are protected. Surveys show that most Bahamians consider protection of our marine environment to be a top national priority. More protection means more benefits for everyone, now and in the future. It's a win-win-win strategy for the economy, for Bahamians, and for nature. Protect our sea, protect our way of life, protect the Bahamas. See the future. Visit Bahamas Protected on Facebook to learn more about marine protected areas.
This public service announcement has been brought to you by the Bahamas National Trust in conjunction with the Broadcasting Corporation of the Bahamas.
For 60 years, we have been here, the voice of the environment. Here, speaking up and for your national parks, all across the islands of this nation. The places God visits for vacation, spanning over 2.5 million acres of land and sea. How delighted then he must be to see a sea of pink, as flamingos mingle and haven like jingles play where queen conchs still sleep. And if you listen, you can hear it. The words of gossiping parrots awaiting the diction of the day. All 365 of them, that's every day and every year, 15,000 children share in the beauty of this playground. Our name is yours. And we have been yours for years unnoticed. Don't forget us. Support us. Your national parks. The defenders of your environment. Join us. Remember, our cause is yours. The first land and sea park in the world is yours. Heritage. Here it is. When was the last time you gasped at our scenery, gotten lost in the depth of our reefs, or even awed at the green of the leaves of our trees? Don't hesitate to donate and volunteer. Don't hesitate to care. We are here for you. The Bahamas National Trust, BNT. 3 letters that spell out simply, perfectly, and undoubtedly that we are yours.
The Bahamas. Natural, pristine. The Lucayan Indians were the first to settle here and flourished because of their rich marine resources. Delightful to behold, recounts Columbus when he discovered these islands. And some of them remain in this pristine state today, as sanctuaries for the species that make their homes here, and havens where visitors and communities may derive a unique quality of life, and accessing places of unparalleled scenic beauty. Thanks to a group of concerned citizens, the Bahamas National Trust was formed and established through an act of parliament, thereby preserving the natural beauty of these islands. It all started in the early 1950s on the island of Great Inagua, when two brothers, Jimmy and Sam Nixon, showed a visiting conservationist the island's dwindling population of flamingos. When they started, there were only 5,000 birds left. With the support of conservationists, the brothers helped form the Society for the Protection of Flamingos and eventually the Inagua National Park. The first national park to be created was the Exuma Land and Sea Park. The Exumas are a yachtsman's paradise. In the 1980s, citizens became concerned about the park's declining marine resources due to uncontrolled fishing. Since enforcing a no-take policy in 1986, the Bahamas National Trust has seen the fisheries come back. And now it's once again a haven for divers, yachtsmen, and visitors from all over the world. However, more pressure is being placed on these marine resources. As fish stocks dwindle in other parts of the Bahamas, protecting the marine resources from poachers within the park is important so they can breed and restock the ocean. More than 3/4 of the Bahamas population live on New Providence Island, making it the most densely populated island in the wider Caribbean region. The Bahamas National Trust is undertaking an ambitious campaign to expand its facilities and the parks on New Providence. Eric Carey, the Trust's executive director, explains.
Our goal is to develop these parks into places where Bahamians can bring their families to enjoy nature. We want to provide Bahamians the opportunity to take their families bird watching, kayaking along boardwalks at Harold and Wilson's Pond and Bonefish Pond National Parks and witness the unique nature of the Bahamian natural environment.
One success is that the Bahamas National Trust began a nature program for Bahamas youth called the Discovery Club.
One of the most important values that I've learned from being in the Discovery Club is that it's our responsibility to take care of the environment and that we must take steps to help and protect it.
Welcome back to Direct Talk. I'm your host, David G. We do apologize for the break in transmission due to unheard of power outage in Freeport. We don't normally have them. Roger said he was wondering if it was sabotage because he was on the show. I tell him, no, man, they love you. People from Homestead Rock want to hear the end of the show. If not, I might have had to steal a half hour from KB show tomorrow. Tomorrow, you can join me here on Friday the 16th. The journey of a Jonestown boy, KB. We're going to be talking about bush mechanic and the biggest box in the world I ever saw. And cause she fat and a hard-heeled girl. And we're going to talk a little bit about Therese. a lady who, no doubt, he has impacted his life. And the Ego Trip Band, that was back in the days. We talk about him and George Delancey and them from Jonestown, and my good friend, Reverend Bishop Branford Dean. We knew him as Bradley. Mommy no light in the kitchen. Mommy no light to cook the rice. So the show is tomorrow. And before we had a power interruption, we were talking with Brenda Farrington. Brenda, are you there? Are you still holding on?
She's no longer there.
She's no longer there. Try call back in. We'll try and get your segment. If not, I'll find a way to get you back in. We have saved some pictures that she sent about her time at the Holmes Rock all-age school. Holmes Road, talk about your days at Holmes Rock.
Well, I started the school in 75. First year was in the what we call the Lodge Hall.
Okay.
And then we move on into the other part of the school. I remember when I was in grade 1, in the Lodge Hall. I remember sometimes when it's time for you to go, what we call the line back then. That means you're going to get beaten. The teacher would say, go on the line. And moving from the Lodge Hall, we had to walk to what we call the main school. The main school, the stone building. And once or twice, I went that way. I was sent on the line, and when I got there, he say, Mr. Parker, I come to get some water, sir. The water fountain was in the school. And so Mr. Parker just will allow me. And when I go back, my face screw up like I got the worst beat there is. And we had some teachers there, Mr. Williams, Mr. Goldsmith was one of the teachers, Leslie Roll. We had a teacher there named Miss Brown, which we call a white woman.
Okay.
Yeah, and but on it all, David, Mr. Parker never taught me, but he was the principal at the school. And, when you go to school and Mr. Parker there, and you come from a home like mine where your father was king in the house, what he speak goes, and when he step, you in line. And that's how Mr. Parker run his school. When Mr. Parker come, everybody quiet. If the pen drop, you could hear the pen because ain't nobody making noise. And what was to give Mr. Parker, where he had these things in the bottom of his shoes. And when he walk, he click, click. And so he coming. And so whatever you're doing, you got to stop it. Then you got to pay attention now. You understand? And then there were times when Mr. Man Jones, he would come and pick Mr. Parker up. He would come and pick Mr. Parker up to take Mr. Parker out. And then sometime when Mr. Jones couldn't do it, my father would do it. And anytime those two gentlemen came along and you see them, you start to feel a little good within yourself because boy, Mr. Parker leaving the yard. And you feel as though you have a little freeway now, you could do certain things, But over it all, that parents back then didn't used to question the authority of Mr. Parker. You understand? What he did and said was like gospel. That was then. And then students back then didn't even want to go home. They let their parents know if it was something bad happening in school coming from Mr. Parker dealing with them. They didn't want that to be known at home. And so there were some good days. They were days that put you in position to govern yourself in a day-to-day. But Mr. Parker was a great teacher.
Excellent. I asked Gio, Ms. Gio Walker, to send me some names of some persons who would have taught at the school, and she has sent me some names, including Terry Goldsmith, who you just mentioned, Miss Sheila Holmes, Malcolm, Chandra Ramnath. Mrs. Ramnath.
Yeah.
Mr. Roy Roberts taught at the school for some time. And then there was Miss Shirley Morris, Mrs. Morris. Then there was Miss Miriam Carroll. I think you spoke about Miriam. Then there was Danica Martin, who was a product of Holmes Rock. That's the daughter of Melda and Donald Martin. And then there was a Patrice Hepburn, a Deborah Robinson, a Royanne Higgs, a Violet Jones, an Adrian Sawyer, and a Patrick Boston. They were some of the teachers who taught at the school. And then I got a very interesting text from Will Stubbs who says, Olga Wilson from Cal Island is watching, and she says she has 6 copies of the Royal Readers, and she's had it for over 35 years. No, gotta be about 50 years, Olga. Can't be no 35.
Yeah.
They probably stopped printing that 35 years ago.
And David, I don't know if any, I don't know if anybody mentioned it, but there was a teacher there named Miss Swan.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Roger talked about her. Talk about her son.
Yeah, she lived amongst us. You know.
She spent many years there. I think she used to live in the residence at one time, right?
Yes.
Where Mr. Parker used to live. All the while, I always thought that was Mr. Parker's house. It wasn't until he retired and he moved back, I guess, to the family estate that I realized that that was the government house that he was living in.
She actually lived in one of the cottages. There were 2 cottages there in the yard.
Okay.
They turned one into the principal's office where my grandfather was, and then the other was where Miss Swan and her children resided for most of her time.
And then Holmes Rock was a big sports power home. Some good things came out of Holmes Rock in terms of sports.
Yeah, you know, when you speak about Holmes Rock within the community of Grand Bahama or in the Bahamas in general, it reminds us about our little country in the international world. You know, you could pick your 1 or 2 athletes that dominated for a period of time, and that's where Holmes Rock fall in that same category, because we, like Roger was saying earlier, we had a athlete there by the name during our time, Pauline Sanders, and you couldn't beat her on her worst day. You just couldn't beat her, you know, and so we hold our own. And then when it comes to the basketball part of it, you know, the Holmes Rock Rockets, one time was Cycle One Rockets, Dallas Rockets, you know. We won about 3 championships. We won 2 back-to-back, somewhere 93, 94, somewhere around there, you know. So we hold our own when it comes to sports.
Yeah, and speaking also about sports, as you know, the Jones family is big in sports even today.
Absolutely. John Dwell.
Yes.
Talk about their father.
Yeah.
Preston Jones would have been a dominant sports power back in the days.
Right. And then his brother Timmy and I went to college to play basketball.
Another basketball star.
Yeah, and then Charlene has a son who's playing internationally as well. So the Jones family has made a major impact.
Hold your thought. We're going to the line. I think we have Brenda on the line. Brenda, are you there?
Yes, I am, David.
Good afternoon.
And good afternoon to you.
Back. Go ahead and tell us about the cleanliness of the school.
Yes, I don't know. I'm sure I'm surprised Ludell didn't mention that, which was good for me. But at the end of the school year, remember you had to clean out, you had to clean the school, remove all the desks, clean those, and then the floor, which was concrete. And then you had all the suds because then the kids start playing in the water kind of thing. And my memory of that is because I was playing, I fell back and I hit my head. And then I got up and I cried from the school to where Mr. Parker lived after he retired, you know, the distance from the school to there. That was where I cried, and then because Doreen said, "Brenda, why are you crying?" And I said, "I fell and I hit my head, ma'am." You know.
But you were a dominant sports power. Tell us about your days in Holmes Rock. I know we should have some photos that our technical producers might be able to pull up with you running barefoot. And after Holmes Rock, I know you went on to 8 Mile Rock. But tell us about your days and the competition of the sporting days at Holmes Rock.
In Holmes Rock, it started out with your dad, Janice Wallace. He was in charge of Sports Day. We used to practice because there used to be a general sports happening at the YMCA. That's where the sports field was. So we had to practice down in Holmes Rock. So we ran from, you know how the school faces the road. Well, we ran from there to just before you get to the main street where the church is. But we didn't go that far. Holmes's parents' house, you know, we ran just about there. So it was 60 meters, and one day I was running and then going back to the school, and I stopped just short of the line because you didn't have the tape that you run through. There was a line, and I stopped just before the line, and Janice came up, bopped me in the back of the head and say, "You're supposed to run through the line." So needless to say, I continued running through the line every time. And then there was an incident where we had sports day at the YMCA. My father, Charles Farrington, came and took me for lunch, and I missed my turn for running. So Janice put Lou Dell in for me because I was in there. And then when I finally got back, you know how that probably went. So I took Lou Dell's spot. And so she won my race. I ran, and she was older, so I ran with people that were older than me, and I won her race. And one of the people I ran against was Martha Pinda at the time, and we would always have the discussion. She would say, "I won." I said, no, you didn't." You know. So that was the time. It was quite interesting, and it was, I guess, a prelude to going to the Freeport High. And that is where, sports for me really took off. And I know you had some photos. There was a group picture, and then there was one with me running. I ran, I did everything, but the track was my main sport. And every year, I don't know, cousin Irene Stewart, she used to show up at sports every year. And my mom was there, but cousin Irene, when I ran, you know, she gave me the nickname of the horse because I guess I ran so fast. But it was interesting in terms of what I did. Like I did 100 meters, 220. The relay was always, I guess, for me and those who ran the relay, the shining. I did high jump. I did long jump. And at one point, I did the shot put, and I did javelin, but those went by the wayside, and it was just the high jump and the long jump and the field and the track. And that is what I did until, I guess, I finished school. There was a photo where I was being presented with a trophy, and I was holding it. But there was a track team called the Flamingos, and John Martin was in charge of it. And so we as a group or as a team did quite well. So there was two people, the top boy and the top girl was given the trophy to hold. And then it appeared in the Tribune, and I noticed I was about 11 when that happened. And so from there, you know, every year going to the track which was held in March, it was always, 8 Mile Rock, because there was a teacher, and somebody mentioned it. There was a Mrs. Williams who taught at the school in Holmes Rock. Well, her husband, he was the coach. Mr. Vaughn Williams, he was the coach of the team. And, he never raised his voice, but he got the results that he wanted. And he was the one who took those pictures that you would have received.
So I guess you would have had a wonderful time at Holmes's Rock representing not only that school, but I guess West Grand Bahama.
West Grand Bahama, yes, and it was great. At the time, I didn't know it, but I enjoyed it, and it's all because I guess Janice saw the talent in me, so he made sure that I learned how to do it, how to run, and made sure, like I said, run through the tape. So yes, it started in Holmes Rock, and as I think Roger mentioned, barefoot. You didn't wear runners, because, hey, your runners is made for school. But when you ran barefooted. And in that photo that you also might have received for 8 Mile Rock, they had grass and not on the road like we did in Holmes Rock. So Freeport High School was where the track was. And so it was all grass. And there again, ran without shoes. So, yeah.
Well, who was the relay team in your 4x100? You remember?
The relay team, it would have been Madeline Stewart. It would have been Kathy, then Lewis, and I can't remember who the third one was, but I think Madeline started. I could be wrong, and then the second leg, and then Kathy did the third leg that she brought to me, and then I took it home.
Did you all win the race?
All the time. So yes, we dominated the relay races. We dominated the 100 well, it was 100 yards at the time. We dominated that, and we dominated the 220.
Any closing comments?
Closing comments is that it was a wonderful time, and then you made friends and you kept them even to this day. But it was a really good experience. And comments, I would say it would be nice if Grand Bahama could be a focus for the track and not just Nassau, because there were a lot of talents in Grand Bahama that went unchecked.
Yeah, and Brenda, you remember me every time you came by us as well, and beat me every time except the last time you and I ran. I was able to edge you. You remember that?
Well, I would think that because I was no longer at home and I went back, and you're running, without practicing, and it's like, okay, I'll do this for fun. But when it came to sports day, you couldn't challenge me on that. But yes, I do. And I was out of school, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Any closing comments, Brenda?
No, I'm good. I think that for one of the things for the sports, and you were talking about it, I think in terms of sporting and education, I think Holmes Rock will always be on the map for sporting and for education. And thanks to Mr. Parker.
Very much for calling in from Canada. I know you were trying earlier. Thank you for being able to work out all of your technical difficulties, and I know you had to stay through the power blackout. And I want to say a special thank you to Cindy Russell. Mom, Cindy's on. She's there working today. Closing comments as we wind down. Holmes, any closing comments?
Yeah, David. I like to say, that the small community of Holmes Rock hold its own. Be it through sports, political, being in business, because, my grandfather had a business down there.
Old Papa Skeeter?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and,
you can't talk about Holmes Rock unless you mention Papa Skeeter and Rachel Stewart.
It was a spot, you understand? And then, religious, we all our own.
Churches,
yeah,
yes.
we all our own, and that would, you as a young man, makes you so proud.
Yep, you had Reverend Enos Duncanson, who serves as the first pastor of the Mount Olivet Baptist Church, succeeded now by Reverend J.C. Wallace, who I guess will be someone succeeded by somebody else. And then we have Pastor Richard Monroe, who served as pastor of the home. Who was at the chapel before him? I remember the Newtons and them used to come there every time for vacation Bible school.
Yes.
They were the good days, boy. And then I remember, I don't know if Ludell remember, we used to play little games. Holmes Rock was known for playing rounders back in the days. And so Stick Around and John Wallace, them used to go down the bay every day to play rounders. I used to like playing two little dicky birds sitting on the wall, one named Peter, one named Paul. Fly away, Peter, fly away, Paul. Come back, Peter, and come back, Paul. We were known for playing hopscotch. And Sheila Hepburn brought hopscotch, I am told, to Holmes Rock, and Jack and Ball, Roger, and slingshot.
And marbles.
Shooting marbles. When you talk about marbles in my time, I talk about Tate-Hat. Oh, Tate-Hat. Oh, spinning top.
And you know, and that's what's so different in this world today, you know, when it comes to the friendship and how people interact with one another. Back in those days, that was just the way of life. You know, if you wanted to play, you had to find somebody to play with.
Right.
You understand? Nowadays, these young people, they just find their phone and they isolate themselves to the corner and they find themselves entertainment. But back then, if you wanted entertainment, you had to find somebody to do that with. Be it ball, Jackson ball, Soki.
We used to play basketball with the rim of the bicycle hook. We cut out the spokes and some of us used to play crate.
And some places, it was a big cork, not basketball.
Yeah, absolutely.
Crate, crate.
And I remember the cart. JC used to build a cart. Used to put the wheel on it and roll you around. Then big entertainment was take the hanger and the empty the rim of and just roll around your rim. Right, Roger, let's do a quick walk. See how quick we can remember some of the names of persons who would have attended the Holmes Rock. Just the last name of families, starting from the corner up there by, that would have been Van Rey and Alice Haney.
Yes.
And then there would have been Liz Culmer. The Culmer family would have been next.
Yes.
And then Rose's father on the right-hand side.
Baptiste?
No, Hilton.
Pinder,
Yeah.
Pinder.
Yeah, and then it would have been the Baptiste Holmes.
And Walker.
Then
the Jones family.
The Jones family, that's PJ and them?
Yes, that's the...
And then you get to that little roll section there.
Yes.
With Philip roll them.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And then you had Man Jones was across the street.
Yes.
The bar was owned by Ron Jones. Ron Jones had the club. And then Almond children would have been, the late Almond Roll.
Jones.
Yes. All the Inzi and Corner.
That's Jonestown.
That's the Jonestown.
Yes.
And then it was William Pinder, cousin Vinny.
Yes.
He was next. Him and cousin Julia. The only man who used to, everywhere his wife go to live with a child, he was right behind her. He would let Julia go by herself.
Yes.
And then it was the Martins, Rosenell and Raymond and them.
Yes.
And then it would have been, who next to them? Roll, what's his first name? His wife is from Canada. That's where Philip Roll there.
That's his uncle Livingston.
That's what I was looking for. Livingston and them used to live.
Yes.
And then Talford and them. And then it would have been the Stewarts.
Yes.
Nick Stewart and Ortland Stewart and Treason Stewart and Carlos and Percy.
Yes.
And then across the street would have been the Stewarts again.
Yes.
El Giver and Horatio and Bernice and Sandra May and Jeanette.
Right.
And then across from them was the
Pinders.
The Pinders.
Yeah.
That would have been
Shirley though.
Shirley.
Yeah.
Zula. What the father did name?
Chicken
Fat. Yeah, you know the Chicken Fat. Edwin Chicken Fat Stewart.
Yes.
And then further down would have been
the Roll Down.
Oh, absolutely. That's yours.
Yeah, from sea to sea.
Carolyn and Errol and their children.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the cross would have been Verna. Miss Grapp. Can't forget Miss Gretchen.
Yes.
And her husband Wesley.
Right.
And then Bev and Joyanne and they moved in a little later because they
moved into Roll Down.
They moved into Roll Down.
Yes.
And then next to that would have been the Pinders. I remember Rose.
Yeah.
Family used to live in that house there.
Yes.
And then it would have been Lorena.
Right.
What would Lorena mommy name?
Cleola
Pinder.
Yes.
And then across the street is Sal Lillian. now. And then John Roll had a big room called the Elbow Room. Yes. It's a big club. John Roll had a nightclub. It had apartments upstairs. And it was a gas station, I think, back in the 50s.
And then you had some barracks there too.
Yes.
That they taught us.
Absolutely. Yes. And then there would have been Jasmine Roll. That's Miss Elva and El, Shana and them. And then would have been across the road from them would have been the church. And then it would have been Dick HB.
Yeah, and then don't forget the Johnsons just before the club.
Oh yeah, Johnsons on the next side, right next to them. Right. That's Airly, Althea, and her husband Lincoln Johnson, and their children. And then further down it would have been Mika. The Sands.
Although to the corner was then.
Oh yeah, we go through the corner. Yeah, go through the corner. But before they finished the main street,
yes.
Yeah, it would have been the Mika and the Sands family.
Yes.
After them would have been Clee Bartlett them and Charlie them.
Yes.
And then after that, it would have been Russelltown.
Yes.
That's Marsha and what the name is home?
Kimley, Carolee, Denise. Ezra Russell family.
Absolutely.
And you know.
And then next to that would have been Teddy Minor, my great grandaunt.
Yeah.
That's where Louise Minnis and them, who would have no doubt had some time there. Eddie DeVoe and Eddie and Sabrina and Charlene. Then it was Connie Missick and Daisy who spent some time on there. Louise Archer went to Holmes Rock as well for a time.
Right.
She was Archer then before she got married to Minnis. And then there was Rose. And then Ulysses and then would have been across the street Solomon.
Yes.
Solomon children. Sister Pearl.
Yes.
And then through the corner it would have been Holmes them.
Yeah.
And then after Holmes them, who else Holmes?
Beulah Molly.
This Beulah Molly. Come close to the mic for Holmes. I've been pulling you close to the mic.
My auntie Beulah, and then we had an auntie there. They, they was only brothers and sisters through that corner.
Right.
Besides the Johnsons having the other side.
Right.
And so that's basically it through that corner.
And then when you get to the end, if you go east, you can hit Danny, the Smiths.
Yeah, the Smiths. And then, back then there was only one or two houses through that area.
Yeah, that's before the deals and them reached.
Yeah, because my granddaddy, you remember my granddaddy?
Yeah, that's right. John Katani.
Yes, Evelyn, Jackie.
Prudence.
Yes.
And then Early Cox would have been through there, yeah. And then we're going west, you would have had.
But don't forget that Miss Meidel was true.
Miss Meidel was true there as well.
Yeah.
Okay, before she moved
more into the land.
Okay, yes.
Yeah,
and Dawn, her brother Dawn, and them.
Yeah.
The
Pinders.
Yeah.
And then the Joneses, that's right.
Yeah.
Who could forget Mrs. What's her first name? Everett Jones' mummy. Isabella. Absolutely.
Yeah, Clinton and Reach.
Yeah, and then she had a son named David. And then going west, we had Miss Dell, Wendell, and Michael.
Yeah.
Yes.
And their daughter, who passed away. She's working the bike.
Melanie. Yes.
And then we had Miss Dell. And across the street, now Alicia. And then further down was Austin.
Yeah,
Miss Doris, the oldest living woman in Holmes Rock.
Right.
And then Hattie made them, that whole clan in there. Who are they, Holmes?
Miss Doris was the greatest bush doctor there is.
Yeah. She's 98 years old.
So it was working.
Working on her. And then there was Hattie Mae and
Tens and Miss Boleyn.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you go.
Then Gomelda and Donald is next. Yeah. Ludell can get every name.
Yeah.
And then we ended with Betsy and Parker Clan and then Balarissi, and we got to my people,
Hector,
Mama Mina, Hector, and Clarence. Tomorrow, join us for our show, Direct Talk here. We want to say a special thank you to our producers and to the guests. You've been tuning into Direct Talk. I'm your host, David G. God bless you and good afternoon.
You're watching the ZNS Network, the People's Station.
Legend, a story that has been passed down for generations. In our history, there are numerous untold stories. This is our legend.
After 9 albums, they've carried the message of the Bahamas around the world. Along the way, they let the dogs out in 2000 becoming the only Bahamian musical group to win a Grammy Award. Meet Isaiah Taylor and Baja Men, the most decorated Bahamian group of all time, and find out why they're the focus of this week's Legends, The Untold Story.
Hi, I'm Anthony Newbo. Welcome to another edition of Legends, The Untold Story. My guests tonight, Dyson, Rick, Isaiah, and Mo Grant. They are Baja Men. Gentlemen, welcome to Legends.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure being here.
And thank you for agreeing to sit down and talk to me. I think we can have a lot of fun tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. You promised. And thank you for tuning in and watching Legends, The Untold Story. We'll be back with Baja Men after this.
Make your company representative stand out through an embroidery design on your uniforms from Janae's Uniform Center, Chesapeake Road. Janae's utilizes the latest state-of-the-art embroidery technology to monogram large and small quantities of shirts, caps, bags, and other articles. If you don't already have a digitized logo, Janae's can design and digitize your idea and bring it to life. Then install the logo of your choice from their large selections of 27 stock colors of golf shirts in cotton or dry fit, caps, or workwear. Call 394-8385 or 6 or visit www.janaes.com.
Welcome back. You're watching Legends, The Untold Story. I'm Anthony Newbo, and I'm talking tonight to Baja Men. Baja Men was not always Baja Men. Baja Men was high voltage. Dyson, you don't know about high voltage, do you?
I know the pictures.
You know
I learned the songs.
You know the pictures.
Wasn't around.
Zaya, tell me about high voltage.
You said Dyson doesn't know. This might sound crazy. Rick doesn't know why. Because when high voltage was formed, when we were performing at the 4.5, Portia was carrying. True. At least so I was told. True. She was pregnant with him.
Yeah.
Singing on stage and pregnant. Yeah.
What's the 4.5?
Good genes. Baja Men was high voltage. Zaya.
Yes.
Tell me about high voltage.
High voltage actually was formed in 1977. It was Pat, Portia.
Tell me about who's Pat now. Tell me.
Pat is Rick's dad.
Right.
At that time was Portia's husband. Boyfriend at the time first. We also had Tony, God bless him, he's now deceased. We had Garfield. And we had Orny Martin, but Cecil Richardson already was there before Orny, but Cecil really never came in to perform, but I just mentioned his name. And we were in the 4.5 from 77 to 79 until Emerald Beach burned down.
Emerald Beach 4.5
yes.
was a nightclub in the old Emerald Beach Hotel.
Yes.
Which is right next door to, it would have been right next door to where
Nassau
we are.
Beach.
Right.
Right next door.
Where Cable Beach now, where Crystal Palace now sits.
Where the Wyndham Crystal Palace now
right.
sits. That was the Emerald Beach
Yes.
Hotel.
Right.
And I said right next door because right now we are in the Sheraton Nassau Beach Resort, which had another name, and we're going to talk about that too, Zaya and Mo. Upstairs in the